Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're visiting with Gail Nordskog. Gail Grace Nordskog, author of Hearts of Purpose, real-life stories about 10 ordinary women doing extraordinary things for the glory of God. Gail, welcome to the program.
It's really going to be fun being with you. I think this is going to be pretty interesting getting to know you.
Well, I'm so glad to have you. Gail Grace Nordskog has established the Gail Grace Nordskog Collection to embolden readers to live their lives with a heart of purpose for God's glory. Gail has been involved in media for over 2 decades. She currently produces and hosts a program called Hearts of Purpose that can be seen on her website, heartsofpurpose.com. Gail and her husband Jerry live in Ventura, California, where they've raised 6 children, 4 of whom were adopted from China, and they operate Nordskog Publishing at nordskogpublishing.com. Gail, it is just a delight to have you here. You give us this revelatory work of taking us into the lives of 10 extraordinary women in a way that is biographical, it's spirit-filled, and you kind of connect some dots about the parts of these individuals that we are commonly not familiar with. I'm thinking of Joan of Arc. Your perspective, your insights on Joan of Arc are stunning. I don't think that I've ever seen anything like this. What was the compelling reason in your life? How did you come into contact with extraordinary women?
Well, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I took a course called The Perspectives on the World Christian Movement. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or not. It's just an excellent course that you can take to learn all about God's heart for missions and the people around the world. And that's just a natural thing in me that I just love the whole concept of missionary work, but right. I've not personally been called to go. So after the course, all the people are asked, well, what are you going to do? What can you do at this point? And I had a little bit of fun background in communications. I went to my public access TV station and decided I'm going to start showcasing these missionaries, men and women, and other people in the community and other ministries, not just going out into a mission field. And I started to get to know these people that way, which I thought I just love them. Their stories are amazing to me. So that's how I started.
Okay. Now, your husband wrote the foreword to the book,
yeah.
A very sweet and interesting insightful one to kick this off. Were you raised in a Christian home? Is this something that's always been a part of the fabric of your life, or was this something that you embraced with Jerry? How did all that come about?
Well, I was raised in not even a Catholic home. I had a Catholic grandmother. And for education, we were put in Catholic schools. But Rabbi, I must tell you, I can remember being as young as 3 years old and having a conscience of what was right and wrong. In fact, I remember stealing something, a little yard duck from someone when I was about 4 or 5, and I could not wait to go to my first communion and confession and be able to confess that sin to God. I mean, that's how I was just so in tune at such an early age. But, as years go on, I fell away from any belief system until I was in my early 20s. And then I met some campus crusaders who shared the gospel with me. And I've been a Christian for close to 40 years now.
So it took evangelism, it took outreach, it took somebody
Yes.
coming to meet you right where you were.
Exactly. Yes, very true. And I wasn't grateful that they were there because at the time I wasn't ready to be a Christian, I thought. And I remember thinking, I wish these girls would just go away. But really, I really didn't want them to go away. And they gave me the 4 Spiritual Laws book. I don't know if you remember that. And probably a few months later, I was so empty inside that I pulled that little gospel tract out and said the sinner's prayer, and I haven't looked back.
How interesting. We had an earlier guest on the program that we talked about the church and how the church needs great breakthrough, that we look in Acts chapter 2 and the people went out to the
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
And instead of, in her description, instead of putting a steeple on the building with the upper room and creating a church out of it, they actually went out, which was
Yes.
the Great Commission to go out. And
go,
so, yeah, to go. So we create these buildings and we park ourselves there, kind of like the Field of Dreams. If we build it, they will come. And we don't go out anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're
Except
a living
these 10
testimony.
ladies are going out.
Yeah,
They're going.
right. And they've even
Yeah.
rebranded themselves as Crew. Campus Crusade for Christ is now called Crew, to make it more catchy and connect with the youth. You and I are actually the same age. We're in college at the same time, and I was very much in the Jewish. All my friends were Jewish, and we were very much. And so Campus Crusade passed us by. We were the tough nut to crack, so they just left us alone because we were all Jewish. And they would say that they loved us, but they didn't really share with us because they couldn't really put it in terms that we understood. 3 in 1 and Trinity and Jesus and all those things were kind of foreign concepts to us. So they loved us, but they were loving us to death. I came to find that out at age 44 when I accepted the Lord. You open the book with one of my most favorite chapters in the Bible, 2 Corinthians 5:17, where Paul talks about a new creation. This whole concept is a very Jewish concept. Rabbi Nicodemus understood it. Jesus talked about being born again. This is that new creation. Talk to me about this metamorphosis. I remember Franz Kafka wrote the book Metamorphosis. I don't know if you read that.
No, I don't remember reading that. I remember reading a book years ago called Christianity is Jewish. Do you remember that book?
Of course, yes.
That book really made me understand and see the connection of Jesus and what this was all about, and that, you know, Jesus was Jewish. He came as a Jewish man. He came to the Jewish people, and God, in His mercy, brought the rest of us into His family if we are willing.
Yes.
So
it's like people ask me. Yeah, people ask me when I converted, and I go, "What would I convert to?" Tell me what would I convert to? I believe in the Jewish Messiah. The fact is that God's grace says you don't have to convert to Judaism to follow the Jewish Messiah. We've kind of turned this thing around 180 degrees, and we talk about the conversion of Paul. Paul says, "I'm a Benjamite. I'm a Jew." And as was his custom, he went to the synagogue first. He didn't stop being Jewish.
Right.
He embraced his Jewishness. He went to minister to the Jews because he spoke the language as a Jew, as a rabbi. And so this was the model, and we've done so much to kind of water down that model to make it very Christian as opposed to embracing the fullness of the gospel message found in Genesis 1 through the book of Revelation.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you were drawn to this new creation, to this metamorphosis. Was it because
Yes.
you went through a change that you recognized this, or that you were embracing this concept of God?
I'm not sure how to answer that. Maybe you could clarify it a little bit.
Well, were you drawing on your own experience as you wrote this first chapter?
Okay, the first chapter, actually, you need to know, and I don't know, maybe you don't understand this. Every author in this book actually wrote their own story. It's an autobiography.
Yes.
Okay, so you knew that. So I didn't write their chapters. Okay. The book came about, like I said, through the TV program. The fact that I do have a husband who has a publishing company. And after a number of years, I just thought, well, why not promote these ladies in another way, as well as the little TV show and the internet program I have.
Right.
And Jerry liked the idea, and we just started putting it together about a year and a half ago. So that's how I came up with the concept and the book, from what I was doing in the past, and the fact that I did have a connection with the publisher.
I understand.
Okay.
So kind of walk us through, how did you select these women?
Well, I am a woman of prayer, so I prayed about them. I have a book too coming because I couldn't get them all in this book. So these particular 10 were available, and I know them, most of them personally. I know them all personally now, but some of them before I even started the book concept or even the TV concept, I already knew some of these ladies. And then the rest of them I've gotten to know and have gotten to interview them personally. And I thought these stories are so powerful. I would love to share them with others. So that's what I began doing a year and a half ago. And we just got it together and had this lovely book. What I love about the book, not only is everything in color and just a pretty book to me, the way we were able to put it together. But after each story, there are 5 questions. And we're hoping that the women who read this, maybe it'll be used for a Bible study group or, just some ladies getting together and sharing. And I know there are so many women that can relate at least to one of these gals, their past, because we all have some kind of past there, and it's just beautiful to see how God can take that past and our mistakes of the past and turn them around for good and for His glory. And that's what I want people to see, that they can be forgiven. They still have a work that God wants them to do. And the older I get, Rabbi, I don't know about you, but the more I see how fast time goes. And every day is so precious that we got to live it with a purpose. And that's what I'm hoping to instill, especially to younger ladies. You feel, when you're young, you feel like you have forever.
Right.
And that it's the blink of an eye, really, if you look at life.
You have a conversation with Joan of Arc.
Yes.
Where did you two meet?
That's a good question. I met Joan when I was probably in 3rd grade at the Catholic school I was telling you. Mm-hmm. I was just fascinated with her story. I think whoever taught us about Joan of Arc, I don't know which sister she was, but she must have loved her, because I ended up grabbing that love and excitement and respect for this young woman who knew God at an early age. Catholics, that's all that was in France at the time, the Catholic Church. So, a lot of us Protestants, we like to poo-poo anything Catholic connected, but that's kind of not fair because they didn't have anything else. Mm. And I really believe this woman had a real love for the Lord. She believed that God told her to go and do what she went and did. That's what gave her the boldness. She had a real faith. And I don't know, somebody with this kind of character, love for God, seeking God out through prayer, and then stepping out in what she believed that she was called to do. I felt that was the connection with the other ladies. Now, I forgot about Joan after I got into my teen years. I totally forgot. And probably about 4 years ago, I went to New Orleans to meet some family relatives that I had never met before. And there was that beautiful, I don't know if you ever saw it in New Orleans, down near the water area, this huge, beautiful statue of Joan of Arc on her horse. Have you ever seen that?
I have not.
Oh, well, they haven't taken that down yet. It's still there. And that's when I got reconnected with Joan, and I started reading and researching her again.
So you have this narrative, this conversation between you and Joan of Arc, and you're able to extract from the autobiographical and biographical sketches of her to be able to interview her and have her share her story with you. Mm-hmm. It's a lovely play on an interview of a sketch, if you will, that kind of makes it more intimate, more personal, as you try to imagine her voice and put the voices to it, as we tend to do in media. We put a face and we put a voice and animation with it that sees it acted out. She became, again, a role model for you and awakened something in you that was from your youth. Mm-hmm. Do you think that today we have young women growing up with role models like we used to?
I can't think of any. I obviously can't think of a role model that a young woman would. Yes, I can. I have one, and I don't know how many would see her, but that's Lila Rose. Do you know who she is?
I do not.
She is a young woman who's taking a stand against the Planned Parenthood. She's a young woman that had gone in undercover and uncovered a lot of their conversations about what they would do and what they're really doing behind the scenes. So she's a young lady that I think is amazing. So, but as far as in general, our society, no, I don't think there's anyone. Do you? Can you name one?
Unfortunately, I don't. We have some religious figures, we have some political figures, but we don't really have, the Billy Grahams, the real leaders. Unfortunately, I think we have them, but they're either regional or local. But these national figures of inspirational, our first ladies kind of filled that role for a number of years. Eleanor Roosevelt, Lady Bird Johnson. There's several that were in that role. Jackie Kennedy, who had impactful areas, Keep America Beautiful, so many different programs through our lifetime that we saw that were done by the First Lady. You had Princess Di, who was an icon, but I don't know how much of a role model she was. But we have tended to move away from heroes and from superstars of the faith and people who were champions, the Mother Teresa's. Seems like that's a generation gone by, that we just don't have these Rosa Parks, Mother Teresa. The list is getting shorter and shorter. So I'm hoping that your book will introduce, that mothers will buy this and read this to their children, that they might begin to look at women who made a contribution. I can see this as you point out some very interesting aspects that, first of all, there's names that I'm not familiar with. Joan of Arc I am familiar with, but how did you select the women that you would interview, and what was the dynamic of why it was different with each one of them?
Well, we're all so unique, and we all have such unique callings. What was the common thread was that they were all willing to go and do whatever they felt God was leading them to do. These are unsung heroes of the faith. Maybe people won't ever really know about them, but there are people out there that I believe are my heroes. And these ladies are 10 of them, along with Joan of Arc, so that's 11. But that's not all there is out there. It's just that we don't know them yet. And I am sure if you wanted to get some of these ladies on your program, they would probably be able to come. I think that every single one of them is so worth talking to.
Well, that's quite an interesting concept. You have a television program. Is that still operating?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm in the studio more now than I was before.
Okay. And tell me about the program. Tell me about Hearts of Purpose and what your mission is and what kind of audience you're reaching.
Well, I don't know what kind of audience I'm reaching. It's a labor of love. I do believe I'd say if my mother was still living, I definitely have her watching it. No, I know there are a few people out there watching it, and you can go to my website, which is heartsofpurpose.com, and all the programs are up there. The reason I do it, it's fun to me. I like being in your seat, though, not the seat I'm in today. I like talking to other people and drawing them out and finding out their story. But like I said, I based this on that program that I went to, that course, that missionary course, and that's what started me up in doing these kind of interviews again. So my desire is to showcase these unsung heroes of the faith that are going out day by day to some of the poorest people in the world, some very unsafe places in the world, and some right in Hollywood, that are working there. What a mission field that is. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to highlight them and try to promote some of these ministries.
Gail, you talked and you interviewed these people over a period of those 4 years that you talked about, from the time you took that course into this real calling on your life. How have you changed because of your interaction with these women?
I don't know if I've changed. I don't see it in me, but I'm just blessed when I hear their stories. It's so encouraging to hear what they're doing. I'm hoping that I'm more compassionate. I'm hoping I'm bolder myself. I'm hoping that, someday I might be able to go and do a short-term mission trip with some of these ladies and just get in there and, really get to know what they're really doing. It's one thing to talk about. It's another thing to be in that situation.
When you went to your husband, the publisher, and said you wanted to do this project, what was his initial response?
He loved it. He loved it because he knows what I've been doing. He's seen the programs. He knows some of these ladies as well as I do, and he just thought it was a great idea, and which I'm really grateful for. And we were able to put it together between our editors and my husband. It's a beautiful book. I can't really brag about it. They did the work. It was my concept, and we just brought it to fulfillment, and I love it. I think it's lovely.
It is a beautiful book, and for those in our audience, that's a hardbound, beautiful with glossy pages. It is certainly a keepsake item. You adopted 4 children from China.
I did.
How did that come about?
Well, it's been probably about 16, 17 years, maybe 18. Well, it's my 21-year-old. It's been almost 20 years since we started the adoption process. My husband and I were not able to have children together. We had 2 daughters. We each had a daughter when we came into the marriage, and we wanted to add to our family. It wasn't happening biologically, and a friend of ours had just gone to Russia. Well, a couple, Jim and Lisa, and they had gone into Russia. They were going to be adopting a little girl from Russia, and my husband reminded me that a year prior, he said if we did not have a baby within a year, we could consider adoption. And that was hard for me because that's not what I had wanted. I felt like Hannah praying and just going before God and praying for our own child, our biological child. And as time would go by, I believe that my husband and I were an answer to prayer from the people in China to please come and help with these children that are just being left and abandoned. And I did a 3-day fast because I'm always wrestling. I don't know why, but I'm always wrestling with God. And during the fast, I felt God tell me plainly He wanted us to adopt. And He didn't want us to go to Russia, which is where I thought He was going to lead us, because the children would look more like us. I felt really clearly that He said China. Now, we didn't know anybody from China. We didn't know anyone that had adopted from China. So that was kind of strange to me. And the fast came and went. The 4th day, I was saying I didn't really hear from God. It wasn't really God. The 5th day, though, I started to get convicted again. And I said, okay, God, if that was really you, you've got to make it clear. I don't know where to go. I don't even know what kind of an agency to go to. I don't know what's happening with China. And the next day in our local paper, and this is how I remember it, it said 100 Ventura County families to adopt 100 children from China. And the agency was right in my hometown. So I thought, okay, we're going to China. So that's when the process started for China.
How fascinating. I have a California adopted daughter from Fallbrook, born in Fallbrook. I lived in Diamond Bar over in the Pomona Valley. and adoption stories are extraordinary. They're all extraordinary. Every one of them is a special gift from God. We've been talking with Gail Grace Nordskog, author of Volume 1, The Call, Hearts of Purpose, Real Life Stories about 10 Extraordinary Women Doing Extraordinary Things for the Glory of God. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to dig into these autobiographical sketches and interviews that Gail had to let you see some of the attributes of an extraordinary woman. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're visiting with Gail Grace Nordskog, author of Hearts of Purpose, real-life stories about 10 extraordinary women doing extraordinary things for the glory of God. Gail, welcome back to the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Gail, how did you select these 10?
Well, I had gotten to know them through either interviewing them or just through different social, Christian social groups that we are a part of. And the common thread is that they're all women of strong faith, very humble, and wanting to be available for God. So that's how I got to know them over the years. Some of them are very new friends. There's one young lady that I've known about. I think she's a baby of the book. She's not 50 yet. I've known her for a number of years, 15 years, 16 years, but I never met her. And I got to meet her about 2 weeks ago. And her name is Lisa Scheidler.
Okay.
She's a young woman. She's a missionary. She is from 5 generations of missionaries, which is amazing in the world today. You know, that there are people that are following God generationally. It's not my life, but it's what a beautiful testimony that is. She's out of Eastbrook Church, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I have a very personal relationship with her because my son, who was the 3rd adopted child, is alive today because of the work that this young lady was doing in China at the time. Wow. When we were ready to adopt this boy, I again was kind of trying to do knowing God wanted me to us to adopt, but now I wanted to get back to Russia. I had 2 little girls already from China. And so I'm picturing this little blonde-haired, blue-eyed little Russian boy about 2 years old that we were going to adopt. And we went through the whole process. We had our whole document completed when we got a phone call saying that there's this little boy in China that really needs a family. And the reason being because at the time, China was thinking that they were going to stop allowing children over the age of 6 to be adopted because they were afraid. China's always trying to save face. And I believe they were afraid these older children would be able to talk and let us know if they were being mistreated or just not cared for very well in these orphanages. So as much as, and then I saw a picture of my son. He looked like a little Zumba wrestler. I mean, he wasn't skinny, he wasn't starving, he looked like he was doing so well. Well, it turns out that he was probably about 2 or 3 days old. He was found by a very, very elderly woman in not Xi'an province, but if you know anything about China, that's where the terracotta warriors are, in that area, a very poor area. And he was in the garbage. She was looking for food, and she found Daniel, and we believe he was about 2 or 3 days old. She tried to care for him. She was unable to do that. After a while, he was not thriving. He was starving to death. And her pastor knew of these Americans who were in this other area that were taking in special needs children and getting funds from this church here in Milwaukee to be able to get them the surgeries or whatever it was that they needed. And he was able to get Daniel to Lisa and the other Christians there, part of the underground church, and they were able to care for him. And I think they had well over 50 children in their care from like 94 to probably around 2000. Yeah, 2000. No, well, okay, the early 2000 and maybe 3 or 4, somewhere in there. Before they stopped and felt that China was now at a place where they could start caring for some of these children. They were able to get most of these children adopted out. And our son was about 6 years old. So that's when I heard about this little boy. And we felt, after prayer again, we felt, okay, forget Russia. We're going back to China. And we went and got our son. And he is the only picture of our children in this book. He was about maybe 3 months old at the time. And he's in a picture with about 12 other little babies. So he's in that book. So I just had the pleasure of meeting Lisa about 2 weeks ago. But she's amazing. Let me just read something here. I just love this quote from her. Let's see. I can find her here. Here she goes. She says, if you look at the 1040 window today, the place on the map where the world's 1 billion people live, it lies just between China and Jerusalem. The Chinese church believes God is challenging them to pick up the baton that the missionaries brought them and to carry the gospel back to Jerusalem from China, across Central Asia, and then through the Muslim world. When Adam, my husband, and I heard of this vision, we felt that God could actually be calling us to China first in order to reach the Muslim world. Sometimes God works that way, and I have learned to be obedient and not to question why. God will reveal his plans in time. Sometimes he only shows us one step at a time, but if we trust him to be sovereign, we will see his work. And so off they went, her and her husband went. She knows Mandarin fluently.
Wow.
And now she's working on other languages as well.
You know, what's so interesting is most people don't realize there is a Jewish community in Kaifeng, China.
I didn't realize
that.
I'm not even sure where that is.
Kaifeng is the Jewish community in China. So,
what area? Do you know what province?
It's known by several names. It's in East Central Henan, China. It was once the capital of the Song Dynasty and one of the 8 ancient capitals of China.
Wow. And how did they end up there?
Well, that was in the dispersion. Most people don't think about the diaspora, and our people were sent to the 4 corners, but the 4 corners in the Bible are Asia, Africa, and Europe. That's not the 4 corners of the world, meaning North and South America and Australia. The only 3 continents in the Bible are Asia, Africa, and Europe. So we were sent to the 4 corners of the biblical continents of Asia, Africa, and Europe. So when you see in Acts chapter 2, you see them speaking in foreign tongues, and the people on the street hearing it in their own native tongue. And you look at the list of names of the languages, and you start thinking, oh, those must have been Arabs. Those must have been... No, they were all Jews. They were there for the Feast of Weeks, for Shavuot, which is the same day as Pentecost. It's 50 days from the Exodus. It's the same as 50 days from the resurrection. So they were there, and they were gathered back because this was one of the 3 required pilgrimages to Jerusalem. And so that's why there were so many Jews on the street. This was not a Christian work. This was a Jewish work at that time.
Exactly.
And so you take a look at where these communities are, and they were dispersed out. And so the 3 sons of Noah went to 3 different locations. And so you have the Shemites, which we are. The Shemites are the descendants of Shem.
Very interesting.
It
is interesting. I know, when you look at, I don't know about you, as a kid, I never really found history fascinating, the way it was taught. But once you see God's hand in history, and from the beginning of time, it's so fascinating to see him working. So I could be a major history buff now.
Well, it's fascinating. There are, in Kaifeng, there are approximately 100 families, it's the remnant of the Jewish community, about 500 Jews, with about 1,000 that have Jewish roots, mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, which is not small compared to some North American cities where you don't have many at all. So it's quite fascinating. So you had a connection with Lisa what are some of the other individuals that you covered in the book? Who are some of them?
Okay, well, you might know, probably from WorldNet Daily, you're familiar with Dr. Ted Baer.
Of course.
Yes. Well, I have his wife spotlighted here. We've just been friends for years. And, you know, Ted is the type of man that's just out there in front promoting all the time. You don't realize Lily's there. And Lily was very much, and is still very much, involved in the ministry. And I wanted to highlight her. She's a woman, I just love her. She has, let me see what I wrote down about Lily that you might find interesting. First of all, she is the CFO of Movie Guide. She's been there from the very beginning, from when they started Good News Communications.
Yes.
And it's a biblical guide to movies and entertainment, which a lot of you know. Their ministry, after much prayer, they decided they would do best to reach the heads of studios. So I'll just quote this. This is exactly our ministry outreach, to change the hearts and the minds of those who are making those movie decisions, so they make them that movies that are edifying, entertaining, and inspiring. And I don't know, have you ever gone to one of their galas?
I have not.
You should do that. You should do that. Let me see.
Well, you'll get me an invitation to the next one, and I'll come.
Okay, that'll be good. I think we'll try to work that out.
Good.
In fact, I'll have Ted give you a call.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Lily has been suffering with a disease, I don't know the name of it offhand, that causes the mucous membranes to dry up to the point where she has lost sight. I think one eye completely, just all scar tissue, and a little more in the other. She's very limited in her eyesight, but she is still doing great and mighty things for the glory of God. She is participating in every work of Movie Guide behind the scenes. She's very, very active with the gala. She has a lot of that talent going on behind the scenes, and she had gone to architectural design school when she was young, and she actually was able to design the whole building that they now have for Movie Guide. So God is still using her in great and mighty ways, and I wanted to highlight her.
Well, as you may not be aware, she's from Rosario, Argentina, which has a large Jewish community in Rosario. Jewish Voice Ministries did an outreach in Rosario festival, and tens of thousands came out for it, and thousands were led to the Lord in this outreach in Rosario.
And that was strictly to the Jewish community there, or just
well, it was using the churches to reach into the Jewish community, to invite. They did street evangelism, they did concerts, they did workshops, they did all kinds of outreach, and it's their pattern. They now concentrate mostly in looking for the lost tribes, the lost connections, the Beit Menashe of India, the Falashamora of Ethiopia, reaching into communities that still are observant Jewish communities, but they have no outside connection. So they can't tell you why they still wear a tallit or a skull cap and why they pray in Hebrew. They can't really tell you the origin of it. They can just tell you that this is the way it's always been in their village for thousands of years. And this is the diaspora. And so there's outreaches all over the world looking at DNA, looking at communities which are Jewish.
That is so fascinating, Rabbi. I love that. DNA, besides flight and the airlines, DNA to me is one of the most exciting discoveries God's allowed us to have at this time. You know, just some of the things they're able to do with that is amazing. So what an exciting time we live in. Now,
you have a connection in Ethiopia. You know, Ethiopia had a very large Jewish population. Project Solomon was the airlift out of Ethiopia, but you have Sharon Daly. Is it Daly,
yes.
Daly or Daly?
Yes, Daly.
Daly.
Sharon Daly. Her father was a missionary. And she ended up being very involved with her family over the years in the ministry. Let me grab her here. I have interviewed her. She was I think she was about the second or third person I interviewed when I started Hearts of Purpose. She lives right here in my hometown. She was one of those that came to the perspective courses that we were taking and shared. And I just, again, such a humble, sweet spirit. She and her husband, who passed away about a year ago, took up the baton after her daddy passed away. Their ministry is called the Mossy Foot Project.
Okay.
They provide, now Mossy Foot, I'll explain that to you, our viewers here, but the Mossy Foot patients, they support them with education, prevention, medical treatment, vocational training, and of course, a message of hope, which is the gospel. These are people that their feet are extremely grotesque, and they're ostracized from the other people because a lot of people are ignorant to what is causing it. They don't know if it's contagious or what. But it turns out that there are these little microbes in the volcanic ash that are so tiny you don't see it. They walk around with bare feet. It gets into their skin. It causes the foot to just almost explode, almost like elephantitis.
Right.
It gets so big and so grotesque. We have some pictures in the book. And just number one, keeping the foot clean, and number two, giving them shoes to put on their feet is such a simple thing to eventually eradicate that condition. So that's what they're working on. They share the gospel, they educate, and they care for the needs. I think they have at least 16 clinics for this particular condition there in Ethiopia.
The hearts, they really are hearts of purpose.
Yes.
And their purpose is a heart for God. And so
Yes.
God has bound his heart to their hearts, which is what gives them the purpose. It's not that they have a purpose and then they invite God to be a part of it. These are callings, and each one in these vignettes that you do with them talk about this calling. And this has become your calling to share the callings of these extraordinary women. And so you've become a messenger, almost there's two Hebrew words for messenger. One, angel, is a messenger, and the other one, Navi, which is a prophet, a messenger of God. But the scribe is one role that we don't talk about in the Bible very much, and that is the one who writes everything down. And God always says, write this down and tell the people this. Well, somebody's got to write it down, and you become that scribe.
It's an interesting concept. I hadn't thought of that.
And so these records that you are now, like Josephus, all through history, we had scribes who kept records, historical accounts of these testimonies, of these stories, of these eyewitness accounts. And that's what the Gail Grace Nordskog collection is about, is this heart of purpose, and you become the scribe for this.
I like that. I hadn't thought of that, but I'll write that down.
Actually, in Hebrew, it's called a sofer, S-O-F-E-R, sofer, a sofer, who records the Torah. He transcribes the Torah. So and in his role, he uses the quill of a kosher fowl. He writes every letter, and he says every letter. He says every word, and at the end he counts every letter, every jot and every tittle, so that every copy of Genesis is the same number of letters, same number of words. Every single copy, and we've just found a copy of the scroll of Leviticus, 2,000 years old, that's identical to the scrolls today.
Wow.
So the scribe is incredibly important in keeping the records, protecting the oracles of God.
Amen. Yes.
Tell me about
thank you.
Tell me about Cindy Reynolds.
Cindy Reynolds, oh my goodness, she is so adorable. Cindy and I met probably about 6 or 7 years ago. I had gone to a missions conference, and she was there sharing her story at a Presbyterian missions conference. she's just one of those. She was a wife and mother, and her husband was given a position in China. I'm not some kind of engineering position in this little town in China, which just happens to be about 100 yards from North Korea. In fact, it's like a stone's throw away, maybe a football field away. But anyway, let me just read some of hers. She is the founder director of Threshold Ministries in China, ministry to orphans in Linjiang, and she has what they call Hope House for Children, which is an orphanage, which opened in 2004. This is something she says here. Today, Hope House for Children stands tall and strong at the end of a small island near the China side of the mighty Yalu River. This river divides China and North Korea by approximately 200 yards. It is the most unlikely place to build an orphanage. To think that we, an American ministry, were given this property to build on by the Linjiang mayor is beyond remarkable. Over the years, he became a good friend, with each of us respecting the other. And here's one more quote. We began to minister in the winter of 1996. We were the first Americans to ever live there, and I was the first American woman to ever go there. I love that.
That's just amazing. We have time for one more. How about picking one at random and sharing it with us?
All right, let me see. Oh, this is a sweetheart, too. This woman's name is Nita Hanson. And Nita was definitely the first woman I had interviewed for the Hearts of Purpose program. I threw Hearts of Purpose together really fast because she was in town. I had heard about her, and I wanted to meet her, and I wanted to interview her before she left to go back to Ukraine. Her story in there is one of obedience to the Lord, like all of them really. What they do is they bring hope to the forgotten in the Ukraine. The Ukraine has so many people with special needs that are just forgotten. They're not treated. They don't have places for them. Mm-hmm. So they've been able to open up places for people of all ages. It's not just orphanage. Wheelchair ministries with a repair center, stroke rehabilitation programs. They have a caregiver support group because they're teaching people to be caregivers and they're supporting them. They have an orphanage ministry, mentoring and developing spiritual leaders. And here's a quote from her. One time when I was really discouraged and even thinking of quitting, I asked the Lord, please just tell me why me. You know what he said? Because you said yes. That takes the burden off of all of us and puts it where it belongs, on his shoulders. And I think that's what we need today. We need people to seek God out, start stepping out in faith, and say yes when these doors open, to step out into them and see if that is a place where God is calling you to. She started with short-term missions, like maybe 2 weeks, going to the Philippines, and then a group asked her to go to the Ukraine for a few weeks. And once she was there, God just got a hold of her heart, and she's still there and doing great things for the glory of God.
It's extraordinary over there. I've ministered in Odessa several times, in Kiev as well. So that's my family's origin is southern Poland, western Ukraine. So that's where they came from. We've been talking with Gail Grace Nordskog, Nordskog, author of Hearts of Purpose, real-life stories about 10 extraordinary women doing extraordinary things for the glory of God. If you have a burden for women, for looking for new role models, for people that will inspire you and your daughters, this is a fascinating read. It is all done in the first person. It's all done in a unique interview style with people that you know and people you don't know. And these are words of encouragement. The genre of biography and autobiography, there's not as much as there used to be, and people's interest, especially young people, needs to be awakened. And this is a way for you to awaken the hearts of your children to help them develop their heart of purpose. So we strongly encourage you to visit ignitinganation.com, click on the Books and Media page, scroll down to today's date, August the 21st, and click on Hearts of Purpose, Gail Grace Nordskog of the Gail Grace Nordskog collection. We're encouraged by the next volume that'll come out, Gail. We wish you great success with this, and this will not be the last time we speak, and we thank you for being with us here on Revealing the Truth.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Wonderful meeting you.
God bless. And that brings to an end our live broadcast day, but that doesn't mean we go off the air. We broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can catch us on Facebook Live or on Ustream on our channel at inbn.com on the Igniting a Nation Broadcasting Network. Until we see you right back here in our studios tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock a.m. Central Time right here from Birmingham, Alabama. Join us tomorrow when we bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth. Until we see you then, shalom.